Welcome everybody to the A Little Less Fear podcast. I'm your host for the show, Dr. Lino Martinez. Oh yeah. Welcome back, everybody, to A Little Less Fear podcast. I'm so happy to introduce Hince. She's the author of a book called A Pathway to Insight. Insight, or the ability to see inside your body or her body. And we're going to discover a lot in this podcast. I'm very intrigued, by the way, because it has a lot to do with healing from the inside and out. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So, wow, what an incredible book, A Pathway to Insight. How did you even come about? How did all of this begin? And how did you get to where you are now?
Gosh, okay.
Yeah, what a loaded question. I know, but it's very fascinating. And I'm really interested. Thank you.
Okay, good. Okay, I had lots of trauma in childhood. You know, a lot of us did. You did too.
Right.
I was born with my right foot up against my right shin. So the first 6 weeks of my life was for the physical therapy. Then I was handed away. I was given away for adoption into a family that had just suffered trauma. And, that was the beginning. And then, we lived in many countries over the years. And when we were in Sierra Leone, when I was 2 or 3, I woke up one morning and saw flames coming into the bedroom. And so, we had a house fire. I was the one to alert everyone about that. When I was 9, we were living in Hong Kong, and I was sent to boys' boarding school in England. I was the first girl boarder at the boys' boarding school. And so I was teased mercilessly for a couple of years before moving on to a girls' boarding school. During my teenage years, both parents became alcoholics, and so life at home was hell. And then when I was 19, I woke up one morning and found my mother dead in the bathroom. So that was a big trauma. It was kind of the disintegration of our family, really, because, mother held everything together. And so I just went on with life. I didn't know what else to do. There was nothing else I knew to do. So I just carried on with life. And it wasn't until I was in my late 30s that I actually recognized that, maybe something from my childhood is affecting me still, because I was really reactionary. I was very much fearful all the time. I think that was PTSD from my dad's anger issues and from the alcoholism. And so I recognized I had to do something. But it was actually the first time something changed significantly was when I went to a doctor's appointment. And he recognized I was more stressed than I should be. And he asked me on a 0 through 10 how stressed I was. And it was an 8. And then he asked me why. And that's when I recognized it was from finding my mother, which now was 2 decades earlier, because the tears was still just right there under the surface.
As if it just happened.
Right. I hadn't dealt with it at all. Nothing had changed. It was still living inside of me. So he used this technique with me. It's called EFT, which is short for emotional freedom technique. It's also called tapping. So he tapped with me for about 15 minutes about my mother's death. And I walked away from that appointment being able to tell the story.
Tap, as in tapping on something?
Yeah, we're tapping on different places in our body as we're talking through something that happened.
Mm-hmm.
So he tapped with me, and I walked away being able to tell the story in my mind without the tears there anymore. And it felt like such a huge shift for me, like the first permanent change that I had that just felt so different. So that was my first inkling. And then I went home. And I have an engineering background. I was a software engineer. I like to know things work before I spend time doing them.
Yeah, how did that work? Exactly.
Right.
How did that work?
Right. So it was given away free by the guy who developed it. So I could just go online and learn it. And I had a cat at home that needed to have daily saline shots, which is funny. We just talked about shots offline. Yeah. And the first time I gave him a shot, my hand was just shaking so much because I was so afraid of hurting him or doing something wrong. So I thought this was a great test case for EFT. So I tapped about it. I tapped about my fear of the injection, my fear of hurting my cat, and my history around injections.
Where do you tap when you're tapping? Is there anywhere on your body?
No, it's a set of places and the ends of meridian systems.
Okay.
So like the first one's the karate chop point on the edge of the hand.
Mhm.
And then and then the crown point on the top of the head, then the beginning of the eyebrows, then the bone on the edge of the eye, the bone under the eye,
Oh, wow.
under the nose, on the upper lip, on the chin, on the collarbone, and under the arm.
Those are pressure points as well, correct?
Yeah, I mean, they're used in acupressure, acupuncture.
Mhm.
There are a lot of uses for them, and you can look them up online. They're in many places online if you look up EFT tapping points.
Okay.
And so you just tap on those points as you're bringing the emotion back into the body. So if you're emotional right now, right, if you're feeling anxiety right now, you can just tap without using any words, and it releases the stored tension from the body. Or if you're going back to something in the past, you bring that memory to mind, right? So I could think about finding my mother dead in the bathroom, right? And that would bring those emotions, if they were stuck in me, to mind. And then I would tap, and the tapping releases that energy from the body.
Wow.
Yeah. So the next day, when I gave my cat this injection, the needle just slid right in. All the fear and the tension and the anxiety had gone. It was just so calm and peaceful doing this shot, and every day thereafter. So that was what gave me the incentive to start working with it, because I knew it was really a powerful tool.
Absolutely. And your cat probably felt it too.
Probably, yes. So I started using it every day. I started noticing when I was feeling emotional during the day, and I would tap then. But I wanted more, because I could tell it was working, because my mind was becoming quieter. I wanted more, so I wrote down every emotional memory I could think of from my childhood and my earlier years. And I tapped through one each night for about an hour to an hour and a half each night, which is a lot of tapping, but I was determined.
Each point you were tapping for that long?
Well, you just go round and round the points. So I was working on one event from childhood, or one belief, and I would just tap. You tap round and round the points as I was feeling it and talking about it, until it felt like it had all gone. There was no emotional left around the event.
That's amazing.
So then they just become stories, right? I mean, I can tell my mother the story about finding my mother in the bathroom without any emotion, right? There's no
without the emotional charge.
Yeah, right. And so I recognize that when there's no emotional charge, it's actually not part of our signal anymore. It's not affecting the future, because it's no longer affecting me now. So my signal that I am emitting to the universe, and that the law of attraction is working on, it's changed. And so my future has changed. And that was really powerful to understand that, because I was looking for change.
That's incredible. And at what do you ever reach a point where you don't need to go through all of the meridians, all of the points, where you just actually start and it stops right then and there? Or do you have to go through the whole process, hitting all the points, tapping on all the meridians?
You have to go through all the points. Yeah. How many rounds you do, right? How many times you go through each point will be different for different things. You know, if it's something that's really ingrained inside of us, it really is ingrained, right? It's stuck in our neural pathways. Then it's going to take more work, but it does work. So I actually found my mind becoming quiet and peaceful, which was my goal. And I remember opening my kitchen door one day and actually saying to myself, it feels like I'm living in a different reality, because those voices were no longer in my mind, right? I wasn't criticizing myself. I wasn't judging other people. And that's why I recognized that the words that I was using had been my dad's words that I had programmed into me from childhood. And I just replayed them over and over again.
Wow. And
So
that's how trauma happens.
It is. We get programmed in childhood. We keep hold of those feelings, and we just replay them over and over again. And to me, the universe is just allowing us another opportunity to feel them and to let them go. Yeah.
So you found a way to undo all that trauma. That's really incredible. And so what did you do once you actually had that quiet mind? What was the next step that you did to continue to find peace?
Well, I realized that EFT is kind of opening up the subconscious mind, and it's expanding the awareness. Now, I knew that word to begin with, but it didn't mean much to me to begin with, but now it means a lot. So to begin with, I wasn't aware of how I felt. I just didn't know. I'd suppressed so much emotion. I didn't know how I felt. But I started to become aware of my emotions. And then I started to become aware of the physical sensations underneath the emotions, right? So we use the words like sadness or anger or frustration, but what we're really describing is how we're feeling, which is a set of physical sensations, which might be tension in our stomach or solar plexus. It might be tension in our jaw or our fists, right? That's where we're holding the tension. So I became aware at that level, which is a deeper level of awareness. And once I was there, I didn't feel like I needed to use EFT anymore. Now I could have done, right? I could have said something like, I could have tapped with, even though I feel this frustration in my stomach, right? I could have gone from the words to the physical sensations. Didn't feel like I needed to do that. So I would just hold my attention on the physical sensations. And I recognized to do that, because they would be squirrely, they'd want to disappear. I couldn't keep my focus on them because I was so good at suppressing them. They were so good at being kept inside of me. So I recognized that what I had to do was actually hold myself like a statue. I'd feel where that tension was in my stomach, maybe. And in order to keep my focused awareness on it, I had to actually hold myself totally still, including not breathing. I would stop breathing, focus on that tension and kind of talk to it, because I just want it to be felt and accepted. And as soon as it was accepted, there would be a shift. I'd have to take a deep breath. I'd relax, release my breath. And then I would think the thought again, bring that feeling back into the body. And it would feel slightly different because it would have released a little bit. Then I'd do it again. And I'd do it again and again and again with the same thought until that tension had released. So now I'm working at a deeper level than EFT, which was working more with the words. Now I'm working
with the feeling.
Right. And so instead of tapping at night, I would lay on the sofa. And because I'd already done my history, I worked more with collective traumas. So I'd think about something like 9/11, feel all those emotions and those physical sensations inside of me, hold my attention on it. There would be a shift. It would let go. Then I'd do it again and again and again. And at some point, so that's kind of the second step. And at some point during this process, I noticed that I could keep my awareness inside my body once the tension had released, which I'd never heard of before. It's a little weird. I didn't know what I was doing, but I was kind of playing around. And so the only way I can kind of explain this is that if you have like a toothache or a stomach ache, you kind of know where that is in your body. You can feel it inside your body. But once the ache is gone, you can't actually get your awareness back to where it was. I found that I could. Wow. Keep my awareness inside.
And so
then I would just play. I would play with it. It's like, okay, so let me do it again. And then I would move my awareness around inside. And I noticed that I could feel where there was tension and where there was no tension. And I would put my focused attention on the tension. And I would do the same thing now at a deeper level. Hold my attention on the tension inside until it released. And then I'd do it again and again and again. And it would release and relax. And it actually feels really good, to let go of really old tension that's been in your body.
Oh, yeah.
Like 20, 30, 40 years.
Right.
Right. So I would do it again and again. And at one point it took actually months, but I was able to put my awareness inside my head, that was a big step for me. And once I could, I felt the pressures inside, the forces inside my head, holding my bones out of alignment, because I've had scoliosis, were just amazing. I'm glad I wasn't aware of them, right? I wasn't ready to be aware of them until I got to the place that I was. Right. So then I'd work a little bit at a time. I could only put my awareness in the pain in my left cheek for like a second or two because it was so painful. But I would just do it over and over again, and it would eventually release. And at some point I could actually feel and hear something release. Like, I didn't know what was happening. I realized it actually sounded and felt like old fabric ripping. And that's when I researched and realized I'm actually moving my awareness through the connective tissue of the body. And that was it. That was a bond releasing. So then I did that over and over again. And at some point I could actually feel my skull bones relax into a more relaxed position. which is why it was great getting those x-rays last year, because I could see from 2013 to 2022 the difference, and the bones have actually moved. My eye sockets have aligned, and I didn't even know those bones moved. And my jaw was way off to the side. Yeah, my jaw was way off to the side and is now much more centered. And my neck is much straighter than it was. My whole body used to be talked, and it's kind of untalking itself. And I've also grown 1/2 inch, which I believe is because my neck is actually being freed up so much more than it ever was. So I've actually grown 1/2 inch as a 55-year-old, which is kind of cool.
That's more than kind of cool. That's amazing. So the scoliosis is scoliosis you were born with?
I think so. It's a little hard. You know, my mother's died. I am in touch with my birth mother. She doesn't know. She can't remember if I had it from childhood. But I suspect from that foot being up against my shin, I suspect that was the beginning of the talking.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, probably.
So you healed yourself, basically, or would you say you're still healing yourself?
There's still tension in there that I'm still working on. I'm working at the level of the bones now. I can put my awareness inside the bones, inside the tooth roots, and releasing tension there. And my left, the side of my face, my left cheek, I believe is where the scoliosis starts, because it goes all the way down to my foot. It's connective tissue. It's all connected.
Yeah, it's all connected. Exactly. And so how long does it take you to get into that mode? And how do you include meditation when you're doing this? Is it a form of meditation? I mean, how would you describe it? Just something totally different?
It's totally, well, there are some forms of meditation, like Vipassana meditation, I think has body scanning involved in it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, to begin with, it took a little bit of concentration to get inside. I can get inside my body instantly now, right? I've done it long enough. So I do it hundreds of times a day. And that's what it's part of me now. But, you know, early on, it took more work. You know, the first few months of even noticing when I was emotional was tricky, right?
Right.
Yeah. But
And
now it's instant.
How would you you said right now you do it like 100 times a day or so, just real easily, and when you're doing it to find the tension to release it?
Yeah, I'm always working on the next level. Whatever's calling my attention, I will go there and I will work to release that, because I know it's calling my attention, right? So I might be focusing on something in my left cheek, and something on the right side of my head and further down in my body will release, right? And I wouldn't have known to put my attention on those places, but I'm called to where the pain is. So that's what I've done through, you know, other than when I wrote down all my history, right? That was, I'm actually kind of forcing that release. I'm actually going to that place and releasing. But pretty much since then, I just go with whatever's calling to me, right? Whatever emotion I'm feeling, whatever's happening, that's what I will work on. Because it's a layer by layer process. It's very much a layer by layer process.
Oh yeah, absolutely, layer by layer. And so trying to envision everything. Do you also envision it straightening, or is it mostly all just feeling? Do you try to picture
yeah, that's an interesting question. Yeah, no, I recognized as that once I was able to put my awareness inside my body, I recognize I'm not in my mind, or I'm not in my thinking mind. I used to say I'm out of my mind. It just sounds really weird. But I'm in my feeling mind, right? I'm just feeling at a physical level. I'm not thinking and I'm not visualizing, which is very much in the mind. So yeah, it's an interesting difference that is kind of hard to get your mind around. Yeah.
Wow. So how has it, I mean, your book, does it talk about the different layers that you took? Tell us about your book.
Yeah, the first section, I talk about how I believe we store this in childhood, right? It's that I believe we're programmed and all the trauma gets stored in our connective tissue. That's my belief. I don't think there's any scientists necessarily talking about that, but it's my experience. So I talk about how I think that's stored and how this releasing works. And then I talk about the different steps, EFT in detail, and what I did, what other people can do, then feeling your feelings, and then going inside. And the weird things that happen along the way, because when the body's had this tension stored in it for so long, once it starts releasing, does some interesting things. So I talk about those as well.
And do you have to, I mean, I would assume not, but I want to talk to, obviously you ask you this question. Do you have to go through the process of like tapping first and then feeling, or could you go straight into the feeling and maybe use the tapping technique for something else later?
That's a great question. Tapping is excellent for things like when we're enmeshed in something emotional and we can't, it's so emotional that we can't feel, right? That's really good. And it's really good for people who are starting out like me. But if for someone's very, I think it's more like the empaths are very good at feeling, right? If you're already really aware of feelings in your body, yes, you can start at that second step. Absolutely. That wasn't me. I couldn't have started there because I was not aware.
And what kind of testimonials have you been getting since your book came out, or since you've been speaking up and speaking out?
Well, I got a bunch of friends who've been doing this work a while, but I've only been sharing the story for about 6, 7, 8 months. So wow. It's still new. So yeah, but I want people to know how powerful we are.
I want people to know that.
Yeah. And you know, we often want to think the control is outside of us, right? We want to blame other people. It's like someone else is making me feel this way, or I'm listening to the news and I don't think I have any control over it. But the control we have is how we feel about it, right? Because that is part of our signal, and that's affecting our personal future. So if we're listening to the news and we're getting all afraid and angry, then that is affecting us. So the control we have is releasing how we feel so that we can come to peace. And when we're at peace, our personal peace, then our future will contain more peace.
I agree with you 120%. Where do you see this going as far as like therapy for like psychiatrists and therapists and psychotherapists and stuff? Do you see that? I mean, I live in California, I live in the US, and we're just so Western over here. I wonder how long it would take for them to start being able to reach into your body and mind and having that connection and going towards therapy in a different way than the way it has been. Because obviously some things aren't working and people still continue to go that route. So
yeah, I mean, EFT's been out there a long time and a lot of people have used it. I don't know that maybe I've taken it further than other people have.
Yes, you have.
And experimented more. So, you know, if I can do it, anyone can do it. I'm no different from anyone else. So, but what I think that really shows to me is that it's all connected, right? Even when we're working with the words and the memories and releasing it with EFT, we're still affecting the physical body.
Right.
And we're starting to clean out these inner wounds, this dis-ease that's inside the body. So it doesn't really matter which level you're working on. You know, you don't have to be afraid that someone says something is psychosomatic, because it doesn't matter. It's still in the body, and all these techniques can work to clear it out.
You know, the beautiful thing too about this is that it could change generations forever. The minute you start clearing these things out, it's not going to be ingrained in your DNA anymore. You're healing. And
absolutely.
That stuff is not being stapled. It's not being stamped. It's not a forever thing anymore, because you could change it.
And now, I'm not quite sure when the episode's going to go out, but right now, with things happening in Ukraine and the word war around, now's an opportunity to actually release it from inside of us. Right? It's come up now so that we can allow it to release, so that we don't have to attract it again in the future. If we get stuck in fear, then we're storing it in our body. But if we release the fear, if we tap with it or feel those feelings of fear inside of us and release it, then we're releasing it, yes, from our body and then from the future.
So for example, right now with war starting or war happening, however you want to view it, would you say that let's say somebody has, or let's just say hypothetically that I have fear for the people in Ukraine, and the people that are out in the cold at night, and the children, and all these thoughts are going through my head at that time. Would it be best to tackle the fear as soon as it comes up,
Yeah,
to
that's ideal. Yeah.
so the
I mean, you
minute you
could, and
start, yeah, you start tapping, you're like, and while you're tapping, you think about, or you feel what you were feeling, as far as the cold children, the trauma, how it's gonna be I mean, it's gonna affect the whole world. So you start tapping everywhere, and it starts to release the pressure that's building inside your body.
absolutely. Yeah. And then, if you want to go deeper, we've all learned about war in school, right? We've all watched movies about war, right? Those are all stuck inside of us. Even tapping on the words, the words themselves are stored inside of us. So the word war, when we use the word war, we're not aware of it. And that's the key point. But when we use that word war, all the memories around that word that we've experienced in our lifetime are actually still living inside of us and are kind of reactivated when we think about that word. So even tapping with the word war for 10, 15 minutes will release some of that tension stored inside of us so that we don't need to attract it again.
What's interesting is I feel that I'd like to try this with my mother. I really want to. I want both of us to try, but mostly, and the reason why I think of her is because when I think of like PTSD, I feel my mother lost both her parents when she was very young, and I feel that the word death has been such a cloud for her, to the point where I'll give you an example. She just recently lost her dog, her pet, after 16 years. But even when he was a puppy, she was already talking about him dying, because she had this trauma about death. She was like, well, one day he's gonna die, or he's getting old already. I'm like, well, it's only 5, 6 years old, and then I was always dreading the day that it would happen, because of how long she had talked about it. Now she talked about it, and now it happened. And she's going through, the whole grieving process. But I always felt that it had to do with her not dealing with the trauma that she had, losing both her parents at a young age. So I felt like all of this is like preconceived anxiety that it hasn't even happened, and she's already having anxiety about something that's going to happen 20 years from now. It's so
Right.
Yeah, and you can stop that in its tracks by tapping.
Right. But we could always bring it back to us, right? So what you could also do is tap about her, right? About how you're anxious, or you felt anxiety about the dog dying, right? And your history with her around the word death, right? And your experience of her experience with her parents, right? The stories you've heard. Because if you yourself let go of any anxiety or any wanting her to change, then she's likely to hear it better.
Exactly. Because and
Yeah.
then there's less resistance, and there's more harmony in my vibrancy.
Vibe.
Vibe. That's the word. Vibe. Yeah. Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how have your relationships changed ever since you've discovered this? I can imagine that there's been all kinds of changes on all kinds of other different levels.
They have. Yes. I mean, life has got so much more fun, right? Because it's an enlightening process, right? We're lightening the burden, we're releasing the burden that we've been carrying around for our lifetimes. So
Right.
that in itself, right, makes life lighter, more fun.
More
And
joy.
yeah, right. Yeah. It's easier to laugh. It's easier to smile. There's so much more depth to life than I knew 10 or 15 years ago, right? Because that phrase, as within, so without, is absolutely true, right? So I know myself at a deep level, and I see that in other people. I see a depth outside of myself that I didn't know existed before. I didn't know it was possible. So yes, relationships have changed because I'm more peaceful inside of me, so I attract more peace from other people. My skull is like, our skull is our echo chamber, right? And I have less tension in my skull, so my voice has changed. I can sing to myself. I don't sing to anyone else, but I can sing to myself now, right? In a way that I never could in the past, because I couldn't even sing some notes before, right? But that tension has released. So that's better. Senses, gosh, dark chocolate just tastes so, I mean, the taste of some things is just blissful. It's incredible compared to like 10, 15 years ago. So much has changed. So the past gets better the more you go. You do still become aware of things, of tension at a deeper and deeper level, but things improve along the way.
And now that you know yourself on such a deep level, do you find yourself tuning into the collective unconscious and how other people are feeling? Are you able to work from a distance with other people's feelings and healing them? Or are you kind of just right now figuring that out, if you even want to figure that out?
Right. Well, it's all within me, so I can only work on me, but I do, yes, I do play with that.
Sure.
And I would love to be able to do that at a deep level. I'm definitely aware of energy, how energy works on a collective level, which is really kind of fun. And I do really see how we replay things now over and over again. And it's really interesting to be able to see that at such a deep level. It's a spiritual concept that we replay things over and over again. But once you actually see it in play and you recognize what you're replaying from the past, it's really eye-opening.
That's really interesting because we're constantly replaying. I mean, it's the way you say it, it's just, you just make it so clear, and I can't wait to try it on myself. I'm being honest, I cannot wait to try it on myself. And like, wow, I just feel like we just need to definitely make this more aware for everybody. Even pets. My cat has traumas. I know he does. Before I adopted him, I don't know what he went through, but it's like, wow, what if I could do this tapping thing with him not going in the box? Like, why are you scared of the litter box? Let's tap here, maybe I could do this with animals even.
Right. Now it's fully accepting, right? So I tap on my dogs too, so yes, but I would say you are scared. It's okay that you're scared, right? We're accepting the feelings, which is a little tricky concept to get your mind around, right? So I actually got to the point that I tap for hours on I hate myself, right? I was fully accepting that I hate myself. And once I did and I let it go, then it's just words. They're just words, right? I can say I hate myself and it's like, no big deal. There's nothing to it, right?
Because it's not true.
But people will say, don't say that.
People will, right? And they will believe it because it's been fed to them, and that's what they think is true. And they store it in their computer brain and think that that's what makes them who they are. None of that's even them.
Right. But if we can accept it, that's when the shift happens, when there's full acceptance. There's a release. There's a physical release. So it's really nice to actually accept those feelings, right? We push them away so much, and we don't think we should be thinking what we're thinking. We don't think we should be saying what we're saying, and then we don't think we should be feeling what we're feeling. But if we accept that, it's like, I feel really lousy today, and that's okay. That's what the tapping does. It allows that to be okay, and then once it does, it shifts.
I'm also thinking, Anne, that with this shift would also come a shift in your identity. Is that correct?
Yeah. So that brings up one point that I really like from those x-rays. And it's not the x-rays that are on my website, but in my YouTube video, I show the side-by-side x-rays. So compared to the 2013 x-ray, that person in that x-ray is clearly not a very self-confident person. But if you look at the 2021 x-ray, that person has a much more confident stance, right? So my whole being has changed, because I wouldn't be doing this 10, 15 years ago. I wouldn't be able to be on podcast sharing my story because I was not that confident. So yes, the whole being changes as you go through this.
I find this incredible because I feel that there, especially I'm transgender. I'm not sure if you know that, but I was born a female and now I'm a male. But I find that there's a lot of like the newer generation or people that are identifying with like they them pronouns. When I've come across them or I've met them in person or through my podcast, I just feel their pain through the podcast. And a lot of the times I feel that the more pain you're holding up on inside, the more you're going to identify that pain rather than letting it go. And I think the more labels people have, the more pain they're causing themselves. And it's really interesting how you're actually proving that to be correct. Your label of pain can change, and therefore even change your identity to just being one. I mean, wow, that's really, you're a force of nature, and I love it. It's amazing. You're an amazing human being.
Thank you. Well, it is this the resistance we have, right? The resistance to someone else, right? Or to someone saying something about us, that resistance or the judgment that we feel is ours. And those are the walls that we put up, the barriers that keep us locked in. And if we can let go of the resistance, right? So who cares if someone calls us something else or a name that we don't like, or if we can actually let that be okay, let all those walls go, that's where freedom is.
And that's exactly true. I'm a fond listener to Abraham Hicks. You know Abraham Hicks?
Yeah, I've been on her hot seat one time.
Have you? No way. How was that? What kind of what kind of heat did she give you?
It was pretty good. One question she didn't answer. She went off kind of on a rant. But the other question I asked her is like, she kind of talks about she or they, whatever.
Right.
Hopefully she doesn't care.
I don't think they, he, she would care. Right.
Right. So they talk about two different ways of going through this process, right? One way you just kind of go with the flow of what happens in life and just allow things to unfold, or trying to manifest things. And I'm kind of doing that first one. It's like, I want to know how life is going to unfold. Once I let go of all this resistance, what's going to happen next? To me, that sounds like fun. But she said, well, sometimes it can be fun to kind of play in the clay, right? So it doesn't really matter which you do, but you know, so.
And that's what you're doing now. You're playing in the clay.
Well, playing in the clay is kind of forcing it. To me, it feels like forcing it. It's like trying to do something. Mm-hmm. Right? There's a tension in that, in trying to do something.
Right.
Because it's not happening yet. So there's got to be some resistance to it. Otherwise, it would already have happened.
Yeah, and you wouldn't be trying.
Right. So I do actually have a chapter in my book for people who want to try and manifest, right? That I ask all these questions to bring up all the resistance that they have to where they are now and to where they want to be. So then that lets go of the resistance so that the energy can flow. So then you're not trying anymore because it will just happen. But I'm kind of heading down the route of, just like let go of all the resistance and then what happens. So I knew it would be fun to tell my story on podcasts. That's why I'm here. To share my story, because I think it's useful for others to know, but also because I love these deep conversations.
Oh my goodness, so do I. You know, and that's why the reason I brought up Abraham Hicks was because they talk about the whole resistance, letting go of resistance, and when you do that, you kind of just let everything in your vortex a little more fluidly. And do you find that happening now, where things are just kind of more landing on your lap a little more easier?
Yeah, and life is just fun. I mean, all those words, the synchronicities, the numbers that happen. I mean, I mean, I just met I didn't meet her. I met her on email, my half sister from my birth father. I just met her like 2 weeks ago.
Congratulations, and it's like that's amazing.
Thank you. It just fell into place through ancestry. It was like all these synchronicities kind of opened up, and like, oh, there she is. It's like, wow.
That's awesome. That's beautiful.
Yeah, what a fun thing to have to experience, right? At this point in life, to actually have a family open up to you. Yeah, so yeah.
Wow, well, what an incredible episode you have been. Seriously, thank you so much for opening up and sharing your story. I really, really hope that you can continue to tell your story, and I will share as much as possible. I can't wait to get your book, and I can't wait to start practicing this on myself and on my loved ones and on my pets. Do you have anything to say to the world? What would you like the world to know? What is the most important thing that they need to know out of your experience that you've had? This, enlightening experience.
I guess to know in the moment that however you're feeling in the moment, that's your signal. and you're going to attract that back to yourself again in the future. So do whatever you can right now to relax at some level. Either just take a deep breath or tap or feel those feelings and let them go so that you can come to more peace right now and then attract more peace into your future.
And there's that now, right now, like Mr. Eckhart Tolle always talking about bringing it now. And there you go, bringing it all now again. Thank you so much with your book, A Pathway to Insight. Tell our listeners, our reviewers, our watchers, how we can find you and how we can find your book.
Sure, my book's on Amazon, or you can ask a local bookstore to order it. I have a website, annehince.com. I have a public Facebook page that I love to interact on. And I have my YouTube channel, which has an EFT demonstration video and a Feeling Your Feelings demonstration video and a few others on there. So, yeah.
Breath of fresh air. You are Anne Hince. Thanks so much for being on A Little Less Fear podcast. And I really look forward to having you on here again and see how you're doing with your health and everything.
Great. Thank you. It's been fun.
Thank you so much. I agree. Have a wonderful day.
You too. Bye.